All right, moving away from the election, we heard that Anthony Weiner was in town and met with the bid and met with some business owners, and one of the things that they were talking about was the high rentals, the high rent. On the Avenue District. And I know you had experience with it, and when I've interviewed and talked to different store owners, that's constantly an issue there. And my question is, really, there's nothing legally that we can do. There's nothing.
No.
There's nothing that can be done. How do you solve that problem?
I tell you what I don't understand, because you have a lot of stores there. The people have owned the building for years. Okay, so it's not like their mortgage is tremendously high or anything. But yes, they'd rather have their store empty for a long period of time than lowering their rent so somebody can go in there. I never understood that.
Right.
I'm not in business of having, buildings and renting them out, so maybe I don't understand it. But you're losing a tremendous amount of money when you want to charge $4,000 a month and you don't have anybody that can pay it. And if you lowered it to $2,000 or $2,500 or something, you might get somebody to move in. And I don't understand that part. But there's nothing legally that we can do. It's it's their building. They can charge what they want.
What's interesting, is back when we started a project it's a long-term project we're still in the middle of, and that is collecting photographs of every store in Jamaica Avenue. New York City took these tax photos, 1941.
Right.
Every building, right. So it costs $35 per photograph, and we don't have that kind of money. So we go to the archives and we print them out from the microfilm. It's a crappy copy, but it's good enough for people to see. It only costs us 50 cents a page. So that's the way we do that. So, but in doing that, you have to do a lot of research to get the lot numbers, and you've got to plug it in. And what we found when we were doing it was very interesting was the high number of buildings that were owned by the same people. It's not like there was in fact I think it boiled down to really 3 or 4 different names that just kept on cropping up all the time.
Yeah, when I looked at different buildings. 3 of the ones I looked at were the same owner.
Yeah.
The same owner, same rent, and I don't understand it. They're still empty, so.
Yeah, and I'd seen Mr. Weiner had said, some of these folks, they hold out into a better economy because then they sign a long term deal with someone. I'm not sure that's entirely the reasoning behind it. I think I think some of it is. Frankly, I think some of it might be some sort of write-off.
It could be, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Lost revenue, absolutely.
So it's it'd be interesting to look into that and see if that indeed was the reason.
Can you imagine, having buildings and purposely keeping them empty just so you can have a write-off?
Right.
Can you
well,
imagine?
also, a couple of those places. I'm not gonna name people's names, but a lot of those places. One person in particular who owns a lot of stores. It would be interesting to get his thoughts on it because he was a former store owner, and I think a lot of the buildings. I know when I grew up, I worked at Phil's Cheese in Colcutt, and he owned the building. That his store was in, and all the different stores around us were owned. The stores owned the buildings,
right?
So they had no huge rents to worry about, and all.
Correct.
But as they've gotten older and have retired, the Jason's family retired, and then they get passed on, and those were people. When I interviewed them last year, that owner wanted $10,000 for those 2. That's a double lot, that store. I can't even imagine, trying to start off your month trying to think, how am I going to make $10,000 just to break
Think about it. $10,000 for rent. Now you're paying electric. You have to pay insurance. You got to buy your supplies. You have to pay employees. It's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, and that's why places go out. What's more of a wonder is how more places come in to do business. But as these, when these folks, even if they did own 5 or 6 buildings around them, and it's usually in a stretch, that they own them, it was to their advantage to have other stores occupied in there.
Right.
Because it brought business to them, and
Sure.
I think, that's been part of the problem in this, and probably not in the same in a lot of the other districts too,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I know on Myrtle, rents are much cheaper. I mean, where I live, 69th Place, that way, you can get a building for $2,000, you can get a building for $1,800, store. Some are higher, some are $2,500, and some are $1,500, $1,600, $1,700. So some good prices there. It's a nice little strip, and we pretty much, there's 1 or 2 vacant buildings, vacant stores, but for the most part, they're pretty much occupied.
Mm-hmm.
So I think rent has a lot to do with it.
Sure. All right. So what do you have scheduled for this weekend?
Oh, well, tomorrow we have Senator Dabo, myself, Crowley, and the 102 have a vin etching at Forest Park by the band shell. I'm going to bring my car and get some vin etching done on my car. And, and then we have a few meetings set up in the daytime, and then we're going to hit some block parties and, visit some people, do a little campaigning.
All right, so that's up at the park tomorrow from 10 until 4. So,
right.
We'll see if...
it's work, we did it with bicycles about a month ago at the co-ops, and we got a number of bikes that came, and it was pretty good. They actually put like a registration number on the bike, and they keep the information at the 102, so if the bike ever gets stolen and it gets recovered, they can trace it back to the owner, which I thought was pretty good. Yeah.
Now, what do people need to bring? I mean, I guess you'd need to bring what? Your registration for the car, I guess, right?
Yeah, you would need your registration, and the rest, the VIN is already on the car, so they'll just, when I did it on my other car, they put it on my windows so that, if it was stolen, that's one way of finding it. They hid it somewhere else on my car, so that, if they ever recovered the car or even a piece of the car, they could kind of trace it back to the owner and or, figure out who stole it or something like that. So it's a good, It's a good process.
That's very good. That's totally free.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually, they need a new machine. There's a better way to do the VIN etching, and tomorrow I'm going to talk to Crowley and Adabo, and we're going to try and get that for them so they can do it. It's a much quicker process if they get this new machine. So we'll work on getting that for them.
All right, very good.
So thank you for letting me call in and, talk at your meetings. And, I really, it really is genuine. Last year I was the new guy. Nobody knew me, but I really get a lot of support and friendship from the people of Woodhaven, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Right. We always enjoy having you in our meetings. You've been right there with us, all the time. Some of those, especially some of those meetings. We think back in January, February, we had some really, really slow, kind of clunky meetings and everything. And what I always tell people, when you came to those meetings, first of all, you didn't just hit and run. You were there and you actually participated in the meetings with us, took part in the dialogue from from start to finish, and we really appreciate that, Mike.
Oh, as long as I have nowhere else to go, I'll stay for the meeting. To me, that's important. Also, I'm serious about the civilian patrol and the graffiti program. I'm willing to participate in both.
We're getting some movement on that, and we'll definitely be reaching out to you.
All right, thank you.
All right, my friend, you have a great weekend.
Take care. Good night.
All right, brother, be good. Mike Miller, our Assemblyman, everybody.